Congratulations, you've just arrived, barefoot, slightly disoriented, and perhaps still clutching the last remnants of your oat milk latte into the 12th century. Not modern Cambodia, no, not yet. You're not here as a tourist. There's no camera around your neck, no guide pointing at stone bas-reliefs with laminated handouts, no signs in English. You've entered a living thing, a sacred machine of earth and devotion. The kingdom of Angkor. It breathes. You don't walk here. You're absorbed. The air is heavy with jasmine, rotting fruit, incense, and a peculiar sweetness that may or may not be decay. The sun is not cruel, but absolute. It doesn't shine, it presses. And the soil? It's warm, alive. Your feet sink slightly into it, as if the land is remembering you. In front of you rises something that no photograph, no textbook, no National Geographic special has ever quite prepared you for. A temple, yes, but not just a temple. A cosmic diagram, a frozen mantra carved into stone. Angkor what? It doesn't announce itself with drama. It waits, patient, as if it knew you would come, as if it's been watching you all your life and is finally ready to speak. The spires cut the sky with mathematical grace, and yet they're worn. Not ruined, just tired, like ancient teeth, stained by centuries of rain and ritual. The steps are uneven from barefoot pilgrims who never knew the word erosion, but understood reverence down to the bone. You take a breath, and it tastes like wet stone and old gods. The first thing you hear is chanting, low, steady, like someone humming from the bottom of a well. It doesn't stop. It vibrates in your chest before your ears catch up. You pass through the gate. No guards. No ticket. Just shadow. Cool, damp, almost blue in tone. The smell here is older. Dust, bat guano, sandalwood, and centuries of breath held in prayer. A carving watches you. It's not a trick of the light. You're being observed. A devata, part woman, part myth, smiles from the wall. Not seductively, but knowingly. Her eyes say, "You don't belong here, but you're welcome anyway." Her lips curve slightly. A reminder that you're not the first foreign body to pass through these corridors, and you won't be the last. You reach a courtyard. Grass creeps between the stone tiles. Palm fronds sway above. The air has shifted. Quieter. It's the kind of silence that suggests someone is listening. Then a breeze. Not refreshing. Not cool. It's humid and earthy and smells faintly of crushed flowers and snake skin. Something ancient stirs inside you. Something nameless. Your hands touch the wall. It's damp, soft with lichen. You press your fingers into a groove, and for a moment, you feel it pulse. Just once. Like the temple is still alive, or remembering how to be. You look around and realize no one's speaking. Not because of rules, but because speech feels wrong here. Too loud, too temporary. The only words that belong are the ones etched in stone. Sanskrit prayers in curling lines, unreadable now to most, but still echoing softly in some other dimension. You can't decipher them, but somehow they read you. And there's a strange thought that enters your mind like a whisper. You've been here before. It's not true, of course. You were born in a world of LED lights and grocery apps and 8-second attention spans. But something in you feels oddly familiar with this place. Maybe it's in the blood. Maybe it's in the dust. Or maybe, just maybe, the temple remembers everyone who's ever walked inside it. And now, it remembers you. Sleep now. Let the jungle wrap around your ribs. Let the stone know your scent. You've only just begun to enter the dream. This is not a ruin. This is a threshold. And you are part of its memory now. You slept with your back against a pillar last night. You don't remember falling asleep. Only that the stars over Angkor seemed too close, like they might brush your eyelashes. And now, you're awake. But not really, because Angkor doesn't let you wake up. It pulls you deeper. You stand, stretch, and realize something strange. You can't hear a single wheel. No carts, no horses, no footsteps rushing toward the day. Only the sound of water moving. Angkor is not a city like the ones you've known. There are no boulevards, no screaming merchants, no laundry lines waving like flags of domestic war. No, this is a city that breathes. It breathes through the sandstone of its temples, through the clay of its canals, through the still skin of its reservoirs, called berets. You stand at the edge of one now. It's vast. You can't see the other side. The water stretches on like a thought that refuses to end. Some say the berets were mirrors for the gods. Others say they were lungs for the empire. But here's what matters to you now. The air tastes different when the city breathes. It's moist and heavy, as if Angkor is exhaling through the earth into your chest. You begin to walk, not through roads, but through causeways, elevated veins of stone that guide you gently across sacred ground. The sandstone is pink in the morning light, warm under your soles like flesh. You pass temples like scattered organs, some open, some collapsed, all still humming in some frequency that has nothing to do with electricity and everything to do with memory. Birds circle the towers like forgotten prayers. Monks in saffron robes drift between corridors, heads shaved, voices gone. You don't speak to them. You wouldn't know how. Instead, you just listen to the way their presence edits the silence. This was once the beating center of a world. A capital, a masterpiece, a contradiction. At its height, Angkor held nearly 1 million people. You blink. That's more than most medieval cities of Europe combined. And yet, where are they now? The empire was organized like a body. Temples were its heart, irrigation its veins, rice fields its skin, and at its core, the kings, the divine vertebrae holding the whole thing upright. But you don't see any kings today. You see shadows. You see outlines of things that once stood, now bent under the slow weight of time. And in that silence, something aches. You enter another temple, smaller than Angkor Wat, intimate, a side chapel for a god whose name you'll never pronounce correctly. Inside, you find carvings that stretch from floor to ceiling. They don't just tell stories, they breathe them. Scenes of creation, of war, of gods birthing other gods, of demons being pulled apart by monkeys. It's madness, really. Sacred madness. And yet, every line is precise. Every figure symmetrical. Like someone believed the divine could be measured in geometry. The temple was never just a building. It was a diagram of the universe. And you, now standing at its center, are either the intruder or the final piece. You reach out and touch the wall. Again, it's warm. Not just from the sun, from something else, like blood under skin. You wonder, absurdly, if the temple has a pulse. And then there's a sound. Low, familiar. The same chant from yesterday, but different. You turn a corner and see a boy, no older than 12, sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. He's not a monk. His robes are simple. His breathing is slow. You sit across from him. He doesn't acknowledge you, but the space between you changes. As if your presence has weight now. As if the temple adjusts around you like a body around a breath. The chant continues. You don't understand the words, but your bones do. They feel it. They remember something. Maybe another life. Or maybe just the way silence used to sound. This city, this sacred, crumbling city, it doesn't need to be excavated. It needs to be felt. You're not here to study Angkor. You're here to be remembered by it. And whether you know it or not, it's already breathing through you. Sleep now. Let sandstone cradle your thoughts. The next time you open your eyes, you'll be standing in front of a mirror pool, and the reflection will not quite be your own. You open your eyes slowly. The world around you is still. Too still. There is no wind, No birdsong, not even the low hum of chanting you've come to expect. And yet, in front of you, the water moves, barely, silently, like a memory breathing in its sleep. You're standing at the edge of one of Angkor's mirror pools, a beret so vast it mocks the sky. Its surface is smooth as glass, as if reality paused here to admire itself. You lean over. There you are, but the face staring back doesn't look quite like yours. The eyes are deeper, the brow heavier. The skin glows faintly gold in this impossible morning light. It's not your reflection. It's someone else's memory, trying you on like a mask. This is what Surya Varman II wanted. To be remembered. To live forever in water and stone, in echoes and footprints. To rise each morning in the mirror of a reservoir and see himself reflected in every grain of rice, in every carved apsara, in every bowed head. You walk now through the temple that was his obsession. Angkor what? Not a place of worship. Not really. More like a fossilized ego. A perfectly symmetrical hymn to power. A palace of perfection. A mausoleum wrapped in myth. They called him the protector of the sun. You'd call him a control freak. Everything he touched had to be precise. This temple, his temple, is aligned so exactly with the cosmos that if the stars had been even slightly off that year, he would have moved the stars. The central tower rises like a mountain. Mount Meru, to be specific. The sacred mountain at the center of the universe. You climb its steps now. They are steep, deliberately so, to humble the body, to elevate the soul, or maybe just to make sure you really wanted to visit the gods. Your thighs burn, your breath catches, but when you reach the top, something shifts. The wind returns, and suddenly, the city stretches out before you. Fields, moats, forests, and ruins that haven't even been built yet in your time. You sit, because sitting is sacred here. A breeze grazes your skin like silk. The silence here is not empty. It's full. Full of voices that once praised a man as a god. Not metaphorically. Literally. In Surya Varman's world, divinity wasn't distant. It was political. He didn't just worship Vishnu. He became Vishnu. He built this temple as a home for the god, then made sure the god looked suspiciously like him. There are bas-reliefs all around you, carvings etched in a stone so finely. You could run your finger along a warrior's bow and feel the tension of a war you'll never know. You follow one scene. It's the churning of the ocean of milk. Gods and demons tugging a cosmic serpent around mountain, trying to create immortality. Endless pulling, endless struggle. A myth, a metaphor, or maybe a confession. Maybe Surya Varman knew he wasn't a god. Maybe he carved this scene because he was trying to become one. You rise. Further into the temple, the shadows deepen. You pass more faces, some serene, some furious, some erased by time or moss or maybe shame. You realize something strange. Not a single carving of Surya Varman shows him aging. He's always young, always calm, always invincible. But you and I both know that isn't how bodies work. Not in this climate. Not with this many leeches and betrayals. He would have aged. He would have bled. He would have coughed in his final nights, struggling to breathe as his empire shifted beneath him. But in stone, he's frozen, eternal, unbothered. You step outside again. The pool is still there. Now the sky has turned orange. The clouds paint themselves like fading frescoes. You watch as your reflection returns to you. Your actual face, this time. Less gold, more tired, but real. You touch the water. It ripples. And for a moment, you wonder if Surya Varman II could see this moment. What would he think? Would he be proud? Furious? Embarrassed that his temple is now a backdrop for tourist selfies and ironic t-shirts? Or maybe you just smile and say, yes, you remember me. And that's all I ever wanted. Sleep now. The water remembers. And tonight, it will reflect a dream that doesn't belong to you, but needs you to carry it forward. You've walked temples before. You've seen their bones, admired their arches, counted their steps like tourist rosaries. But Angkor doesn't let you walk its temples. It makes you climb them, not like a casual ascent, not like stairs in your apartment or a stairmaster you half-heartedly engage after brunch. No, these are not stairs. These are sentences, each one a breathless declaration carved in stone. Each step a commandment. You stand at the foot of a tower. It looks climbable until you get close. The incline is nearly vertical. The steps are shallow and narrow, barely wide enough for your modern feet. You wonder, was this bad design? Some ancient architect who miscalculated his units? No, it was deliberate. They built them steep so that the body would bend, so that the knees would surrender, so that climbing toward the divine would feel exactly like it should. Painful, dizzying, and entirely earned. You place one foot on the first step. The stone is hot. It bites a little. You ascend slowly, heart pounding, breath quickening. Halfway up, your legs are burning. 2/3, and your hands are gripping stone like it's the only thing keeping you from falling backward into time. And then the top. You don't arrive. You emerge into a platform bathed in light, where the wind greets you like an old friend who's waited patiently for hours. This is not just a tower. It is Mount Meru, the Axis Mundi, the sacred mountain at the center of the universe in Hindu and Buddhist cosmology. The gods live here, or so they say, and by climbing it, you have just crossed the boundaries between worlds. Below you, the chaos of Earth. Rice fields, blood, arguments, drought. Above you, silence, serenity, stone that reaches not toward the sky, but through it. The tower is built in tears, like a wedding cake for deities, or maybe a map for the soul. The outer levels are for mortals, the middle ones for ancestors, the top reserved for gods and kings who've tricked themselves into thinking they're the same. You pace the top tiers slowly, try not to look down. Vertigo pulls at your ankles. The wind here is sharper, cleaner. It smells less like jungle and more like memory. You pause by a window, no glass, just an opening in the stone that frames the horizon like a painting. You see other temples, other towers, some whole, some crumbling, all part of the same celestial blueprint, a universe translated into architecture. This isn't just urban planning. This is cosmology. You find a niche in the stone wall, a little alcove darkened by soot and time. Inside, a statue. Headless. The body still sits in lotus pose. Calm. You feel its absence. The way a decapitated figure hums louder than a whole one. You sit in front of it, cross-legged. The stone beneath you is warm. Not inviting exactly, but aware. You try to meditate. You don't know how, but the temple doesn't care. It receives your silence like an offering. And in that silence, a thought arrives, not from your mind, but from somewhere lower, somewhere more ancient. Maybe the gods didn't live up there. Maybe they lived here, in the climb, in the struggle, in the ache of your legs, and the dirt beneath your nails. You open your eyes. The sun is lower now. The shadows have grown longer. The corners of the temple flicker with golden light and strange silence. You descend slowly. The steps feel even steeper going down. You descend not just in altitude, but in ego. By the time your feet touch earth again, you are no longer the same. You met the sky and did not speak, but showed you its face. And its face looked a little like yours. Sleep now. Tomorrow, you'll meet the God who gave himself 1,000 faces. And you'll realize some temples weren't built for worship, but for watching. This morning, you wake up with a distinct sensation that you've been watched. Not stalked, not followed, watched. like the way an old tree might watch you, or a stone that's been waiting for centuries for someone to ask the right question. You rub your eyes. The temple walls around you are no longer just walls. They're faces, hundreds of them. Some are smiling faintly. Some are solemn. Some have been softened by wind and time. Their features worn down until they resemble more of a memory than a man. But all of them are looking. Always. You've reached the Temple of Bayon. It rises not like a fortress, but like a hallucination. Towers stacked upon towers, like stone lotus buds unfolding. But at the top of each one, a face. Gigantic, calm, serene, lips closed, eyes lowered, brows carved so gently they almost seem eternal. At first, you think they all look the same. And then you look closer. Some are more amused. Others look slightly disapproving. One seems to smirk, like it's heard a private joke about you. And another, you could swear it looks sad, as if it once believed in something that didn't quite survive. This is Jayavarman VII's temple, the king who tried to rebuild the universe with his own hands. After wars, droughts, and gods who had stopped answering prayers, Jayavarman declared himself a bodhisattva, a being of compassion. Not a destroyer, not a warlord, a healer. But you know how these stories go. Every healer needs witnesses. And what better witness than 1,000 stone faces, frozen in serenity? You wander through the maze-like corridors of Bayon. Everything smells faintly of iron, moss, and the aftertaste of incense burned long ago. You press your palm to the wall, cool, rough, textured with centuries of fingerprints. Even here, faces peek from the bas-reliefs. Warriors in procession, dancers mid-motion, boats gliding across carved waves, a crocodile with too many teeth, a market scene with a woman offering fruit forever. The faces are everywhere, but none of them speak, because this was a religion not of words, but of eyes. You climb one of the inner towers. There's no guardrail, no signs, just a spiral of stone worn slick by centuries of barefoot ascent. At the top, another face greets you. You're eye level with it now. It's massive, more than twice your height. Its nose is chipped. Its ear has been partially reclaimed by moss. But its eyes are intact, and they're looking at you. Not menacing, not inviting, just aware. You sit again, cross-legged, your back pressed to one ancient column. The sky is soft above you. Clouds drift slowly, as if being cautious not to interrupt the gaze of the stone. A thought arises, gentle, then sharper. Why so many faces? Why so many eyes? Some say the faces are Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of infinite compassion. Others say they are the king himself, Jayavarman, multiplied and spiritualized, watching over his people from every direction. North, south, east, west. Each tower gazes in all directions. No one was ever truly alone in this city. The king was always watching. The god was always there. But is it comfort or surveillance? When compassion becomes architecture, it leaves shadows. You wonder how it felt to live under the eyes of your king god, to pray beneath his stone face, knowing he might be watching, to love, to grieve, to argue, to rot beneath his eternal expression. The faces never change, but the people did, and maybe, just maybe, that's why the jungle came. You rise, not to leave, just to drift. As you wander, you feel them again. Those eyes, on your neck, on your thoughts, on the secrets you carry but haven't spoken aloud in years. This is a temple without bells, without sermons. Its religion is quiet. Its gospel is gaze. Its altar is you. Sleep now. You are seen. And in the morning, you'll feel the slow breath of the forest pressing against the stone, and realize that not even gods are safe from what grows in silence. You think you've seen the temple, that you've wandered every corridor. that you've memorized the faces, whispered to the statues, and even, in some sleep-heavy moment, been acknowledged by them. But that's the thing about Angkor. It's never finished revealing itself. Just when you believe you've touched its truth, you hear something breathing behind the wall. And it's not a god. It's not a man. It's something older. You turn. Not quickly. There's no need. Because the thing behind you has no need to chase. It waits. And has always waited. A root peeks through a crack in the ceiling. You hadn't noticed it before. It coils down like a question. Thick. Pale. Moist. It's not gentle. It's not cruel. It simply is. You step outside. And now you understand. The jungle is not the enemy of the temple. It is not the invader. It is the inheritance. You walk slowly, your breath sinking with the drone of unseen insects. Leaves press inward from every side. The path narrows. Your skin begins to glisten, not from sweat exactly, but from a humidity of a place that doesn't care about your comfort. This is the kind of air that raises blisters, that kisses with fungus, that slips under your clothes and settles in your bones. And then you see it, top prone, a temple built for Jayavarman's mother, a gift of stone and devotion, now choked by trees the size of ships. You stand at the entrance, and the forest breathes out. The trees do not stand beside the temple. They straddle it. Their roots pour over the walls like candle wax. Their limbs grow through windows. Their bark splits columns in half. So softly, so slowly, it looks like affection. This is not war. This is romance. You enter. Inside, it's darker, cooler, but not safer. The air smells of damp wood, guano, and something almost metallic. Rot? Memory? The corridors are buckled, tilted. Ceilings lean where roots have grown heavy. Stone has been replaced by tree in places. A lintel now rests against a trunk. A doorway now opens into green shadow, not sky. And yet, it's beautiful. A kind of beauty your modern eyes aren't used to. Not clean, not symmetrical, but wild, sublime. Like watching someone grow old gracefully and realizing the wrinkles are not damage, but language. You sit on what once was a step. Now it's a root, soft with moss, cool as a sigh. You close your eyes, and you hear it. Not a voice, not a word, but a rhythm. Like a lullaby hummed in a language the earth itself speaks. They say the jungle took Angkor. They say it consumed the city. Bit by bit, tree by tree, crack by loving crack. But that's not quite right, is it? The jungle didn't take Angkor. It waited for it, patiently, lovingly, inevitably. It watched as the kings rose and fell. It listened as the gods were renamed, recarved, rebranded. It let the humans build their steps to heaven. And then, one day, when prayers grew quieter and bricks loosened just enough, it moved in. A root does not need permission. It finds a seam and becomes the wall. A seed does not argue with stone. It waits. It rains. It splits. And soon, the wall is wearing a tree like a crown. You open your eyes. There's a strangler fig now, growing straight through the old shrine. You walk toward it. Place your hand on its flank. It's warm, and beneath the bark, you feel breath. Some say the forest is reclaiming what was once hers. Others say she never gave it up. She simply let them borrow her skin for a few centuries. You step back, look again, and realize this was never a temple swallowed by the forest. This was always a forest pretending to be a temple. Sleep now. You've seen the roots. But tomorrow, you'll see the blood. You've admired the temples. You've wandered beneath the roots. You've sat in silence while gods looked through you. And maybe you thought, for a moment, that Angkor was all serenity, all lotus blossoms and incense smoke, calm reflections and sacred geometry. But that's not how empires live. Empires don't breathe without violence. They don't rise without blood, and they don't build temples without breaking backs. This morning, you follow the smell of wet iron. It's faint, nearly swallowed by the jungle's perfume, but it's there, in the soil, in the walls, in your breath. You've stopped noticing the bloodstains because they're not red anymore. They're part of the stone. You pass a bas-relief. At first glance, it's beautiful. Dozens of figures carved with elegance and grace. You admire their curves, their motion, their balance. Until you look closer. The figures are soldiers. They carry spears. Their feet trample the fallen. Their eyes blank mechanical. There's no glory in their faces. Only command. A war, or many wars. Frozen here, not to honor the dead, but to justify them. You walk further. The path narrows, flanked by broken statues. Armless, headless. Some say time did this. Others say invaders. Looters. Kings with new gods and old grudges. But maybe it wasn't time. Maybe it was regret. Maybe the stone itself wanted to forget. You reach an inner courtyard. There's no roof, just light leaking through twisted vines. The floor is uneven, but you see them, tiny depressions in the stone. You kneel. They're not carvings. They're indentations. Shallow bowls worn into the floor. You touch one. It's smooth from centuries of repetition. These are where the sacrifices bled. Not human, usually, but sacred. Ritual. The animal would be brought forward, washed, blessed, offered. Its throat slit with silence and precision. The blood caught. The chants rising. The gods they believed listening. You sit there for a while, not judging, just absorbing, because you realize something. The lotus didn't grow beside the blood. It grew from it. Angkor was a kingdom of dualities. It carved paradise while stomping through war. It praised compassion while breaking villages. It built shrines to peace with hands calloused from conquest. Jayavarman VII, the compassionate king, led crusades in the name of enlightenment. Temples rose as cities burned. Mercy was written in stone, but never spoken in the field. You keep walking, and you notice things now you didn't before. A broken chain embedded in a wall. Not symbolic, just forgotten. A sculpture of a man bowing, flanked by celestial dancers. His spine is arched, not in prayer, but in submission. Who carved him? And for whom? And then you see the lotus pond. Real, alive, still blooming, pink and white. Soft petals unfurling in the sticky light of afternoon. It's gorgeous. It smells like honey and hope and something too pure for this world. But you know what lives beneath? The mud, the rot, the bones. Because lotus doesn't bloom in clean water. It rises from filth, from decay, from the same water that carried blood and tears and sweat from 1,000 laborers whose names the jungle never learned to pronounce. You dip your hand in the pond. It's warm. You scoop some water into your palm. It glistens, innocent and ancient. You drink it, and it tastes like everything. Like incense and blood. Like stone and silence. Like a city that believed beauty would save it. But beauty, you now understand, is a cost. And the gods are very good accountants. As you sit there, lotus blossoms open and close around you. The jungle hums. The temple exhales. And you realize you're not just in the empire's ruins. You're inside its confession. Sleep now. Let the blood fade from your tongue. Tomorrow, you'll taste the sky and find out what happens to a city when its lungs begin to crack. You don't hear rain the first time it disappears. No thunder, no warning, just absence. The frogs stop singing at night. The smell of wet earth fades from the air. The leaves curl inwards, whispering secrets to themselves. And Angkor, this city of gods and geometry, begins to choke. You're standing now on the edge of the West Beret. one of the largest human-made reservoirs ever conceived by pre-modern hands. It stretches before you like a liquid continent, wide enough to hold 500,000 souls in its reflection, deep enough to drown 100 forgotten prayers. But it's not full. Not anymore. You see cracks in the bottom, mud veins running like worry lines through an old face. The water smells faintly of copper, moss, and something bitter. Evaporation. Memory. You kneel at the edge. Dip your hand. It's warm. Too warm. Angkor was a miracle of water. The temples get all the attention, sure, those towering spires and grinning faces. But the true genius, the real power, it was the hydraulic system, an empire of water. They called it the Beret Grid, a labyrinth of canals, moats, levees, and spillways. Rainwater wasn't just collected, it was commanded, redirected, stored for the dry seasons, used to flood rice fields in precisely timed intervals. Everything was tied to the rhythm of the sky. And now the sky has forgotten the beat. You walk along a canal that once shimmered like a silver ribbon through the jungle. Now it's dry, cracked, in some places choked by weeds, in others overtaken by dust so fine it rises like ghosts when your foot disturbs it. You find remnants of the old gates, stone sluices carved with worn inscriptions. They look like mouths that can no longer drink. You pass peasants, women with calloused hands, men with eyes like empty wells. They nod at you, wordless. Their fields are yellow. Their harvests are thin. They dig trenches not to channel water, but to remember what it felt like to have it. Drought is not dramatic. It's not a villain with a sword. It doesn't set fires or storm gates. It simply withholds. It teaches you the price of abundance by slowly draining your sense of normal. A day without rain is nothing. A month begins to itch. A year begins to kill. You sit beneath a tamarind tree. Its shade is spare. You chew a leaf, sour dry. Not refreshing, just nostalgic. And from here, you can see the outlines of the berets. All of them. East, west, north. Vast. Precise. Empty. It's like standing beside the lungs of a giant, long after it stopped breathing. There's a story the elders tell about the rain deity, Indra, once beloved by the Khmer. They say he grew angry, that the kings forgot the rituals, that the people stopped believing. But maybe it wasn't punishment. Maybe it was nature, unmoved, untouched, unconcerned with kings who thought they could sculpt the seasons. You rise. You follow a procession of monks through a dry corridor. They are barefoot, silent. They carry no offerings, only bowls, empty, symbolic. They walk not to beg, but to remind the gods what hunger feels like. You follow them past rice fields now cracked open like sunburnt lips. You see statues half submerged in dust, eyes that once gazed into holy water, now staring into nothing. You ask no questions, because the silence is the answer. A city that drank the sky, that mapped the stars, that bent rivers, that bathed gods in engineered pools, is now coughing in the heat. Its sacred canals now paths for ants. Its reservoirs now mirrors for clouds that never break. You look up. The sky is vast, white, featureless, a blank page the gods no longer bother to write on. And in that sky, you see the weight of every forgotten ritual, every missed prayer, every time someone assumed a rain would come. Because it always had. Sleep now. Dream of falling water, of monsoons that return, of a city where rice grows again. And tomorrow, you'll witness what happens when a kingdom of belief starts believing in too many things at once and forgets which God is listening. You follow the canal, not because you want to, but because it's there, long, broken, skeletal, like a vein on a corpse that hasn't yet accepted it's dead. The water is gone, yes, But something deeper remains. A trail of forgotten intention. A path meant for gods and farmers alike. The trees around you hiss with heat. Even the birds seem exhausted. And then, underfoot, the stone splits. A fissure, hairline at first, then wide enough to swallow your step. You crouch beside it. Trace it with your fingers. This is no ordinary crack. It's surgical, long purposeful. It runs through the foundation of what was once a levee wall. You follow it, step by step. And as you do, you begin to realize the empire isn't crumbling, it's drying. Angkor was built on the illusion of control. Control over water, over weather, over crops, over people, over gods. But now the system bleeds quietly like a body losing plasma. You find more cracks. Stone basins split open like dry mouths. Statues tilted, their feet no longer grounded. The canals don't curve with grace anymore. They sag, and in that sagging you feel it, the weight of desperation. The king sits in his high chamber, cooler than yours perhaps. The walls are still draped in silk. Priests burn incense. Astrologers point to stars and mutter about unlucky days. But none of that brings the rain. Outside, the streets grow thinner. Food is scarce. Villages whisper. Offerings become bargaining chips. The gods are bribed, then threatened, then ignored. You meet a woman by a cracked reservoir. Her eyes are lined not with age, but with repetition. Of prayers gone unanswered. Of children coughing in the heat, of the sound of footsteps leaving villages forever. She doesn't ask who you are. She only asks, when did the water stop listening? You don't have an answer, only more silence. You wander further into the bones of the waterworks. Massive spillways, once majestic, now filled with weeds. Bridges designed for ceremonial boats now support nothing but birds. The canals are no longer navigable. They are graves for ideas, for dreams, for control. You climb the bank of a dry moat surrounding an abandoned temple. From above, the entire system spreads out like a broken spiderweb. Once pulsing, now still. You realize something then, something horrifying in its quietness. This wasn't sudden. It didn't crash. It faded, year by year, crack by crack, until no one remembered what the sound of flowing water felt like beneath their feet. You sit beneath a Bodhi tree, not because you're seeking enlightenment, but because the shade is kind. A monk walks by. He's old. His spine bows with age or humility, maybe both. He stops, looks at the empty canal, then says, so softly you almost don't hear. Even the gods need to drink. And then he walks away. You close your eyes. You try to imagine the city full again. The berets shimmering, children splashing, farmers knee-deep in green rice fields, elephants drinking at dawn, but won't come. Your imagination can't override what the stone knows. And the stone knows this. The veins cracked because the heart forgot to beat. Later, at dusk, you walk along the edge of an old water basin. The sunset turns the dust red. Not metaphorical red. Not poetic red. Real. Metallic. Like rust. Like blood. You pick up a chunk of broken sandstone. It crumbles in your hand like burnt toast. You laugh, briefly. Not because it's funny, but because this was once sacred engineering. Now, it's compost for the jungle. Sleep now. Let the dust settle into your lungs. Let the cracked earth curl around your dreams. Tomorrow, you'll learn what happens to a people when belief grows tangled, and the gods begin to fight for attention. The temple smells different today, not of dust, not of damp stone, but of confusion, if such a thing can have a scent. You walk through a corridor where Vishnu once ruled. The carvings still sing his name, curved and curling in Sanskrit script like vines. But someone has chiseled new lines beneath the old. A Buddha now sits where once there was only gods with multiple arms and lotus eyes. They didn't remove Vishnu. They just layer the Buddha on top, like repainting a memory. You turn a corner, and there, another shrine. This one smaller, smoky, cluttered with faded incense sticks and faded offerings. You recognize neither the deity nor the posture. The idol's face is rubbed smooth by generations of hands that weren't quite sure whom they were touching. It could be Shiva, or a local forest spirit, or both. Because now, everything is both. You see it everywhere. Temples that were once Hindu are now Buddhist, or partly Buddhist, or maybe just tired of deciding. One deity melts into another. Old gods are renamed. Statues are draped in new cloths. Stone inscriptions are rescribed. But beneath it all, you can still feel the tension. This isn't peaceful syncretism. It's theological exhaustion. Jayavarman VII believed in the Buddha. Not just the Buddha, the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, embodiment of compassion. He made him the new heart of the empire, built Bayon in his image, gave the old gods polite dismissals. But faith doesn't vanish just because a king wants it to. Not here, not in Angkor. The old gods stayed, watching, waiting, bleeding into the new. You sit beneath a crumbling lintel. Above you, a carving of Garuda, the eagle god, once Vishnu's vehicle. His wings are chipped, one claw gone, but his eyes are still fierce. You wonder how he feels, perched now above a shrine where the chant is no longer Vedic but Pali. You wonder if gods feel jealousy, if being forgotten hurts, if being replaced stings like betrayal. Or maybe they don't care. Maybe gods only exist as long as we're paying attention. And once the attention is split, so are they. You wander into a hidden chamber. The air is heavier here. The floor slick with moss. In the center, an altar stands alone. No idol, just a hollow pedestal. You step closer and carve around its base in delicate Khmer script. He who prays to all, prays to none. You don't know who wrote it, or if they meant it as warning or lament. But it rings in your ears like a bell you didn't know was inside you. You step outside again, and now the jungle feels different. Not darker, not louder, just watchful, as if even the trees are waiting to see which god wins. Or, more truthfully, which god gets abandoned next. It wasn't just religion. It was the identity of the empire. Faith was law. Faith was lineage. Faith was engineering. And when belief splintered, so did everything else. The kings tried to unify it. New temples were built with hybrid iconography. Apsaras with lotus mudras, standing next to demons from the Ramayana. Buddhist stupas rising from Hindu bases. Priests who had to switch scripts in mid-chant. They called it fusion, but it felt like a city trying to remember its name in too many languages. You walk past a group of villagers performing a ritual. Not official, not sanctioned, just personal. They chant to a local guardian spirit, whose altar sits next to a statue of Vishnu, both surrounded by little plastic Buddha figurines someone probably bought in a market. No one seems bothered by the contradiction. They pour rice. They light candles. They murmur things meant only for the dead to hear. You crouch nearby, hands in the dirt, and a quiet understanding arrives. Belief doesn't collapse. It multiplies until it's too heavy to carry, until no one's sure where to kneel, until the temples start echoing with uncertainty. And in that uncertainty, cracks form, not just in walls, but in purpose. The jungle grows thicker. The gods grow quieter. And Angkor begins to forget who it's praying to. Sleep now. Let your mind wander through altars built for too many names. Let the incense of old gods and new deities blur together. And tomorrow, you'll watch the elephants disappear and wonder if even they knew it was time to leave. It starts with tracks. Nothing dramatic. No stampede. No battle cry. Just wide, soft depressions in the earth, still damp from yesterday's rain. You find them at dawn, trailing off into the jungle. Slow, heavy, deliberate. The elephants are leaving. They don't say goodbye. They never do. You only notice their absence when you hear the silence where their weight used to be. The temple courtyards, once alive with their lumbering grace, are empty now. No flapping ears. No rumbling bellows. No chains rattling between ankles. The scent of dung, once so pungent it overwhelmed your nose, has faded from the stone. Even if flies have moved on, you sit where they once bathed, at the edge of an ancient watering hole, now just a shallow bowl of mud and mosquitoes. You run your fingers through the dirt, sift through brittle reeds, and there it is, a tusk chip, polished at the edge, dull by time. You hold it gently, as if it might still remember the animal it came from. They were more than beasts here. They were architects. They hauled stones, pulled timber, trampled paths through the jungle. They were the muscle behind the temples, the sinew of the empire. They lifted gods and carried kings. You picture them, young and old, chained to carts of sandstone, eyes dulled with heat, skin cracked from years beneath the sun. They were sacred. They were enslaved. They were both. Because that's what Angkor did best. It turned contradictions into policy. You walk to the Elephant Terrace, a massive platform carved with proud, elongated trunks, heads rearing in ceremonial poses, frozen in procession. You reach out and touch the wall. It's cool. It's quiet. But you feel a tremor behind it, like someone buried a memory and forgot to kill it. These weren't just carvings. They were promises that the elephants would never leave, that the empire would always ride. But empires forget, and elephants remember. Maybe they knew the canals were drying. Maybe they heard something in the wind the humans couldn't. Maybe they saw too many kings crowned too quickly, too many gods replaced too casually. Or maybe they just got tired. The records don't say when they vanished. There was no grand exodus, no morning procession. They just stopped showing up. One caravan didn't return, then another. Then someone said they saw a herd moving east, past the edges of the kingdom, into forests no map dared to name. And the temples grew a little quieter. The jungle grew a little thicker. And the people, they walked more. They carried their burdens on their own backs. Some grumbled, some wept, but mostly they adapted, because that's what people do when the sacred leaves them. They pretend they weren't depending on it. You sit beneath a banyan tree where an old trainer used to tie his lead elephant. The bark still bears the faint friction burns of rope. You close your eyes, try to hear the echo of their movement, but all you hear is cicadas and the breathing of the forest, which now seems calmer, as if it's reclaimed something, as if it's relieved. There's a story told in whispers, that the elephants didn't die, that they returned to the mountain temples of the gods, where there are no ropes, no kings, no orders, just sky, wind, and memory, that in those far-off jungles, they still carry no one, and walk only where they choose. You don't know if it's true, but you hope it is, because some sacred things are not meant to stay. They're meant to leave, so that we might notice the weight they once carried. Sleep now. The ground remembers them. And in the morning, you'll meet the strangers who arrive by sea, whispering of other worlds, and planting doubts where once there was only destiny. You wake to the scent of salt, not strong, not stinging, just a hint, faint as a memory, carried by a breeze that doesn't belong here. The kind of breeze that's been elsewhere, that's tasted other shores, spoken other languages. It curls around your ear and whispers, "They're coming." The jungle doesn't care about traders. It hears their sails crack and doesn't flinch. It smells their strange oils and keeps growing. But Angkor notices. Because Angkor has always been built on the illusion of control, on knowing the seasons, the gods, the rivers, the stars. And now, here come the unknowns. They arrive first in stories, told in market stalls by fishermen too far from the coast to be reliable. Men who've seen floating houses, who claim to have eaten fruits that bled blue, who speak of people with coins instead of rice, and fabrics that change color in the light. Most ignore them, but the stories stick, and stories have a way of becoming truth, especially in a city already slipping. Then, the ships arrive. At first, just one, then two, flat-bottomed, wooden, painted with eyes on their prows to scare away the sea monsters they no longer believe in. They carry porcelain, silk, spices sharp enough to burn through your memory. They carry silver coins, and smiles that don't reach their eyes. They carry difference. You watch from the edge of the port. It's nothing like your imagined docks of empire. There's no grandeur, just a muddy inlet, half choked by reeds. Still, it pulses with people now, curious, cautious, hungry for something they can't name. The traders disembark. Their clothes are wrong. Their accents, wrapped around the Khmer tongue like vines around stone. But they bow. They smile. They hand out trinkets with practiced grace. And slowly, like water seeping under a closed door, they enter. They don't attack. They negotiate. And it works. Because Angkor is tired. Because the gods are quiet. Because the canals are cracked. Because the elephants are gone. Because the people are curious. And curiosity, as it turns out, is harder to manage than belief. You visit the market 3 days later. Everything has changed. There's a fabric stall now with Chinese brocade. There are jars of Indian clove, cinnamon, strange roots shaped like human hands. A merchant offers you something he calls pepper. You bite it, and your mouth fills with fire and truth. Angkor is no longer alone. The priests worry. Of course they do. New gods come hidden in trade, wrapped in silk, laced into medicine. One merchant gives away little bronze Buddhas with every jar of cardamom. Another tells stories of a land where all men are equal before the law, a concept that makes the local guards laugh until they remember it might be true. You sit by a shrine. It's new, too new, still wet with varnish. It sits beside the older altar, not replacing it yet. But the people are lighting candles at both, just to be safe, just in case. Because the old gods aren't answering quite like they used to, and the new ones come with spices. You begin to understand. This isn't invasion. This is erosion. A slow, sweet softening of edges. A quiet blurring of lines. The gods don't vanish. They become negotiable. Later that night, you walk past the palace. The king is inside, they say, negotiating trade routes. He speaks in borrowed words. He offers grain, timber, elephants he no longer has. But what he's truly offering is permission. Permission for the world to seep in. For identity to stretch. For faith to bend. For the empire to dilute itself into comfort. You sleep near the docks that night. The air smells like fish, sweat, and cloves. It's not unpleasant, just foreign. You dream of maps, of invisible lines, of waves whispering to jungles. You dream of an empire quietly setting itself adrift. And in the morning, when you wake, the sea has come a little closer, and Angkor is just a little more somewhere else. Sleep now. Tomorrow, the stone faces will begin to crack. Not from rain, but from the weight of what they see. You return to Bayon, not because you plan to, but because your feet know where to go when your thoughts don't. This time, you arrive early, before the sun, before the crowds, before the birds begin to speak again, and the silence greets you like an old friend with bad news. The faces are still there. The 100 serene visages that float atop the towers, watching, waiting, weeping in their stillness. But now, something's different. You step closer, and you see it. A crack. Not large, not deep, but decisive. Right across the brow, through the eye, splitting the face, not in half, but in memory. You run your fingers along the fracture. It's rough at the edges, crisp like it happened recently, like time has grown impatient. More cracks follow, hairline fractures running through cheeks and lips, through the once smiling mouths of gods now tired of pretending. It's not just erosion, it's grief, the kind that carves itself slowly into stone, the kind that no ritual can fix, the kind that happens when a city forgets why it built faces in the first place. You walk the gallery in silence. The bas-reliefs still tell their stories. Battles, parades, divine births. But look closer. The warriors are missing limbs. The dancers have lost their grace. The gods are headless, armless, eyeless. It's not vandalism. It's time, wearing its disappointment into the architecture. You sit beneath a column, one of the few still standing straight. A sapling grows nearby, bold, insistent, indifferent. You look up again at the tower above you. The face stares back. Only now, with its cracked eye and slanted lips, it no longer looks serene. It looks human. The kind of human who's lived too long, who's watched too much, who's held their silence while the world changed around them, then finally allowed themselves to age. You remember when the cracks began in yourself. You remember when your own certainty started to fray. A thought you didn't want, a prayer that didn't work, a goodbye you didn't choose. And suddenly, you understand Bayon better than you did yesterday. These towers were never immortal. They were portraits, and even the divine, it seems, can only hold a smile for so long. You walk deeper into the complex, and you notice something stranger still. Some of the cracks have been patched. Mortar, braces, wooden scaffolds leaning like tired shoulders against the towers. The restorers have arrived. They mean well. Of course they do. They label each fracture. They photograph. They number. They inject life back into the stone, one stitch at a time. But the faces resist. The new stone doesn't match the old. The patched eyebrows don't arch quite right. And the smiles look tired of pretending. You meet a worker in the corridor. A local man, maybe 30. He's scrubbing lichen from a wall. You ask him how long he's worked here. He shrugs. Forever, he says. Then smiles. Or maybe just since the crack started. You ask him if it can be saved. He doesn't answer. Just looks up at the tower above him, cracked across the mouth, and says, "Some things don't want saving. They want remembering." You sit in the heat. It's heavier now, thicker. You realize it's not just the stone that's breaking. It's the meaning. The temple once spoke in symbols. Now it mumbles in metaphor. Once, the faces stood for divinity. Now they stand for loss. You close your eyes, and you can almost hear the whisper. We watch the people forget us. We watched the kings lie. We watched the gods trade places. We held our expression as long as we could. And then, we cracked. The sun hits the tower just right. The crack along the eyebrow casts a thin shadow across the cheek. And for a moment, the face looks like it's crying. But only for a moment. Then the light shifts, and it's just stone again. Sleep now. Let the cracks settle in your mind. Let your breath mimic the slow crumble of empire. And tomorrow, you'll meet a monk who tried to bring the rain back, with nothing but his voice. There's a corner of Angkor where time breathes slower. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't appear on maps. It's not in the tour guides, or the restoration plans, or the satellite images that now crawl over the temples like invisible vines. But it's there, a small stone shrine, half swallowed by fig roots, hidden behind a collapsed gate and 3 centuries of silence. And inside it, once sat a man, a monk, cross-legged, unmoving, wrapped in saffron cloth so faded by the sun it looked almost white. as if time had tried to bleach him out of the story. They say he sat there for 7 days, or maybe 70, or maybe he never stood up at all. You'll hear different versions from different mouths, each one offered with a reverence reserved for myths that might have been real. But this is what they agree on. He prayed for rain. You find a shrine at dusk. The forest has reclaimed it, not with violence, but with affection. The roof is caved in. A tree grows through the floor. The walls lean like tired men. And yet, something lingers. Not presence, not energy. Something thinner, more brittle, like the aftertaste of belief. You kneel, because kneeling feels appropriate here. Because this is not a place to speak, only to listen. And when you do, you hear it. A sound not made by wind or bird or root. A vibration, faint, low, measured, not in your ears, in your chest, like the hum of a voice that's long since stopped using air. The monk was not important, not a leader, not a sage, just a man who saw the fields go brown, who watched the canals empty, who saw the temples filling with tourists and vines instead of gods. He saw a city forgetting how to listen. And so he knelt, and he began to chant. They say he refused food, refused water, that he sat in the heat, flies settling on his cheeks, mouth moving slowly, rhythmically, without pause. He did not beg. He did not plead. He reminded. The words weren't requests. They were invitations, calling the rain back like a lover who'd gone out for firewood and never returned. Day after day, he prayed. Locals came to watch. Some brought offerings. Some brought their own prayers, folded like paper and placed near his feet. Some just came to sit in the silence he carved out of the noise. He never spoke to them, only to the sky. And the sky said nothing. On the 5th day, they say clouds gathered. Dark, promising. The wind shifted. The air changed. And then nothing. No storm. No drizzle. Just a sky that watched, impassive. And a monk who didn't flinch. By the 7th day, his voice was hoarse. His lips cracked. His body trembling like a candle fighting its wick. But he kept chanting, and the city began to notice. Not because the rain returned, but because someone still believed it could. Then one morning, he was gone. Not dead, just gone. No one saw him leave. No one heard his steps. His robe was folded neatly beside the shrine. The floor beneath it still warm, as if the stone itself had memorized his shape. Some say he walked into the forest and became a part of it. Some say he turned into rain. Others say he failed and left in shame. But you feel something else. You feel that maybe he didn't pray for rain. Maybe he prayed for the city to remember how to pray. You open your eyes. The shrine is quiet. The tree growing through the center offers no insight. The air is thick, unmoved. But your chest, it still hums. That chant, whatever it was, has rooted itself in you. And you carry it now, whether you want it to or not. As you walk away, it begins to drizzle. Not enough to matter. Not enough to save anything. But enough to make you wonder. Sleep now. Let the chant fold itself into your breath. Let the silence become song. And tomorrow, you'll see how the forest, no longer patient, begins to smile. Because now, it knows it's winning. The vines are smiling today. Not metaphorically, not romantically, but mischievously, like they know something you don't. Like they've been waiting for you to notice. You walk through what used to be a corridor. Stone blocks line each side. Walls that once held bas-reliefs and torches, prayers and purpose. Now, they hold roots. Twisting, slick, muscular. They slide along the surfaces like fingers tracing forgotten lines. They wrap themselves around columns like lovers who refuse to let go. This isn't destruction. It's intimacy. You hear it in the leaves. A sound that isn't quite wind. A rustling that isn't quite random. Something rhythmic, like breathing laced with amusement. The forest is alive, of course. You've always known that. But now it's aware. and it's laughing. You enter a temple you've never seen before. It doesn't have a name, at least not one anyone still remembers. There's no path leading to it, no signs, no scaffolds. It hides beneath a curtain of banyan roots, its doorway split diagonally by the growth of a single tree. You push through, and suddenly, you're inside a stomach made of stone and chlorophyll. The air is humid, so thick it almost sticks to your skin. The smell is dense and strange. Wet wood, bat droppings, stone dust, and old rituals. A shaft of sunlight cuts through the broken roof, illuminating floating particles that dance like ash in slow motion. You take a step. The floor is uneven. Cracked tiles sink beneath your weight. Roots move silently underfoot, like snakes pretending to be still. On the far wall, a mural is half consumed. You can make out the top of a crown, the curve of a jawline, and a single open eye. The rest is buried under moss, bark, and time. It's like watching a dream get swallowed before it finishes speaking. This temple was once sacred. Now it is surrendered, not ruined, not destroyed, but given back, like something borrowed too long. And the forest? The forest is amused, because all this effort, these temples, these carvings, these perfectly aligned celestial corridors, they were only temporary guests. The land never signed a lease. You pass what used to be a shrine. There's still an altar, barely. It's half submerged under a strangler fig that's turned the back wall into a cradle. A pile of small offerings sits at the base. A broken clay lamp, a flower fresh, a few coins from a country that didn't exist when this stone was carved. Someone still visits. Even now, even when the forest has begun to whisper. It's mine now. You sit beneath an archway that no longer leads anywhere. A tree has grown through it, splitting at the top, roots cascading like hair. The canopy above is thick, emerald, breathing. Sunlight dapples the stone like gold filtered through memory. You lean back. Let your head rest against bark that grew in silence, while empires shouted themselves hoarse. You exhale, and for the first time, you hear the forest laugh. It's not cruel. It's not even loud. It's the kind of laughter that happens when someone finally gets what they were always going to get. It's soft, patient, certain, because the forest didn't fight for this. It simply waited. It waited for the kings to die, for the gods to go quiet, for the canals to dry, and the elephants to leave, and the monks to vanish into stories. And then, it moved in, not with conquest, but with comfort. You close your eyes, and you see the future, not in visions, but in feelings. The temples will collapse slowly. A wall here, a tower there. Tourists will keep coming. Scientists will keep measuring. Monks will chant again. Children will play between roots. But the forest? The forest will keep smiling, because it never left, and it never really lost. It just paused. You reach out and touch the wall beside you. It's damp, soft, covered in a thin film of moss that peels slightly beneath your palm. Underneath, the stone still holds carvings. A dancer, an apsara, smiling. But now her face is cracked, and vines have filled her eyes. You whisper something, not a prayer, not a question, just a sound, soft, low. The forest listens, and laughs again. Sleep now. Let the green fold over your thoughts. Let the vines cradle your ribs. And tomorrow, you'll walk through silence so thick, you'll wonder if the gods ever spoke at all. You don't know exactly when it happened, when the sacred became still, when the chanting stopped, when the corridors forgot the sound of footsteps, when prayers turned into echoes, and echoes turned into nothing. But now, standing here inside this place that once sang to the gods, you feel it. A silence so deep it presses. Not like weight, not like judgment, more like an absence that's gotten comfortable. You enter the temple through a doorway slumped under centuries of its own memory. The lintel has bowed. The stone floor is soft with sediment and crushed leaves. Bats flutter in the high dark crevices, unsettled by your breath. And under your soles, a brittle crunch, bones of insects, maybe, or old ash. This temple has no name anymore. Whatever it once was, whatever king consecrated it, whatever god it praised, whatever rituals soaked its stone, it has been emptied of context. Now, it exists for crickets. They are everywhere. A background chorus of legs scraping the air. Their sound not shrill, but steady, like a mechanical heartbeat reminding the walls they still exist. It's not a melody. It's a pulse. You walk slowly. Dust floats around your feet in lazy swirls. The air is thick, not humid, not dry, just ancient. You breathe it in. It tastes like old breath, like the exhale of monks long dead, like incense burned so many times it left its signature in the atmosphere. You pass broken idols. One has no head. Another has been worn down until its gesture, once holy, is now just a suggestion. The dust is not random. It's settled. It's chosen where to rest. On certain shoulders, on certain eyes, as if following a script only the insects understand. There are no candles here, no offerings, just things that once mattered, now coated in indifference. You find a small bowl in the corner. Ceramic. Cracked. Empty. You pick it up. Dust inside. No coin. No flower. No trace of hope. You wonder, was it left as a gift to the divine, or simply forgotten in the act of forgetting? You sit, because that's all this temple asks of you. No ritual. No pose. Just your presence. Your stillness. You sit in the center, surrounded by silence and crickets and dust. And something inside you, something modern and anxious and thirsty, begins to fall asleep. There's no wind, no birds, no gods, only the feeling that something sacred once happened here, and then stopped, not violently, just slowly, like the way a candle doesn't go out. It just becomes smoke. You close your eyes. You don't pray. You just listen to the creak of stone, to the soft hiss of crickets rubbing their legs like they're warming their memories, to the dust shifting quietly like an old man readjusting his blanket. And you realize this temple isn't abandoned. It's resting. Everything inside it is tired. The gods, the echoes, even the walls. They've held too much weight for too long. They've been temples, tombs, targets, metaphors, sanctuaries. And now they just want to be quiet. You open your eyes and stand. Your knees ache. Your back cracks. The crickets pause for just a second, as if acknowledging your exit, then resume their rhythm. You step into the corridor, and the sunlight doesn't welcome you. It just exists. Outside, vines drape over the entrance like closing eyelids. You pass through them, not as a pilgrim, but as someone who's been politely dismissed by a place that no longer needs witnesses. Sleep now. Let the crickets sing you down. Let the dust layer your thoughts like old prayers. And tomorrow, you'll witness the saddest kind of betrayal, when a city leaves its gods behind and forgets to say goodbye. It didn't happen all at once. No bells rang. No decree was shouted from the towers. There was no parade, no lament, no ritual to thank the gods for their centuries of service. There was only quiet movement and the sound of footsteps fading. You walk through Angkor now, and you feel in your bones. This place was left, not lost. That's the cruel truth. Angkor didn't fall in fire. It didn't drown beneath an angry sky. It was not buried beneath an avalanche of foreign swords or crushed by sudden revolt. It was redirected. The capital was moved southward to Phnom Penh, eventually, to a place where the rivers were kinder, the soil more forgiving, the sea a little closer. The city left because it had to, because water was unpredictable, because trade had shifted, because kings grew tired of praying to deities who no longer return their calls. You sit at the steps of an abandoned temple, not ruined, just unattended, like a birthday party no one showed up for. Inside, a statue of Vishnu leans forward slightly, as if straining to hear a prayer that no longer arrives. His eyes are blank, not blind, just resigned. His hands still hold their symbolic gestures, but even those now seem more like reflexes than intent. You whisper something, anything, just to break the silence. And for a moment, it feels like he almost turns toward you. Almost. The records are vague. A drought, a flood, a political shift. No single cause, just pressure building quietly. Until one morning, the king looked out over the dry moats and cracked canals and said, "We'll go." Not with regret, with efficiency. They didn't dismantle the temples. They didn't defile the idols. They just left them, as if they were too sacred to destroy, but not sacred enough to take along. They left the gods like furniture in a house too big to maintain, a table too heavy to move, a memory too painful to pack. You walk through the royal plaza. Once this place pulsed with ceremonies. Drums, dancers, chariots laced with gold. Now hums with insects. The ground is cracked. A small tree grows from the center of what used to be the throne base. You sit there, not to pretend, but to feel. And what you feel is this. The king left, but the gods didn't. They stayed, bound to stone, to ritual, to soil, to expectation. Because the divine doesn't move with markets. It stays where it was invited. And when the people forget to say goodbye, it waits. You wander into a storage chamber behind one of the smaller shrines. Inside, dozens of statues. Buddhas, Shivas, Apsaras, all stacked shoulder to shoulder, wrapped in mildew and vines. Some headless, some faceless, all abandoned, like luggage left at a train station where no train ever came. You reach out and touch one. The stone is warm, not from sun, but from remembrance. What happens to a god when no one looks at it anymore? Does it sleep? Does it shrink? Does it sigh? Or does it sit, patient, stone still, waiting for a voice that never returns? You step outside and notice something odd. The temples aren't crumbling out of rage. They're settling, as if accepting their fate, as if relaxing into the soil, like an old man removing his crown and lying down for the first time in years. The gods are not angry. They're just quietly disappointed. You look back once before leaving the compound. The empty shrine behind you, its walls soft with moss, still holds space for worship. But there will be no incense tonight. No chance. Only the rustle of leaves and the occasional sigh of a statue remembering its name. Sleep now. Let the silence of forgotten gods blanket you. Let your breath echo in empty sanctuaries. And tomorrow, you'll sit on a throne of mold and feel what it's like to be sacred, unwanted, and left behind. You've sat on many things in your life. Chairs, couches, benches, steps. Seats designed for comfort. Seats designed for waiting. Some so modern they beep when you forget your posture. But today you sit on a throne, or what used to be one. It's not majestic. There are no jewels, no inscriptions, no lions carved into the arms, no ceremonial footstools, only moss, green, damp, spreading across the stone like a soft skin grown over old power. You found a throne by accident, half concealed in a ruined hall, tucked beneath the shadows of a broken roof. Sunlight filters through in patches like reluctant blessings. Vines descend in slow arcs from the ceiling, ropes without tension. The columns around you lean slightly inward, as if they're listening. You step toward it. The air thickens. The scent is rich, wet leaves, mildew, and time. Not the sterile age of libraries or forgotten museums. No, this is living rot, the kind that hums under your fingernails. You brush away some leaves, and there it is, a single block of stone, raised, squared, etched faintly with the remains of lotus petals and celestial motifs. You can almost see it, how it must have looked when it was clean, when attendants would have bowed before it, when voices echoed off these walls in languages now lost to vowels and dust. You sit, slowly, gently, like asking permission. The stone is cold at first, then warm, then indifferent. You are now where kings once ruled, where edicts were given, where prayers were received, where sandals never dared to tread, and no one stops you, because there's no one left to say you can't. You look out across the hall. The walls have collapsed inward. Roots have become rafters. Birds flit through the empty spaces where windows used to hold dreams. You imagine the view from centuries ago. Crowds gathered, officials sweating, silk robes and golden parasols. The hush before an order, the fear beneath obedience. Now, there's only wind and a single frog blinking in a puddle where a royal carpet once lay. The power here is gone, not spent, not destroyed, just unclaimed, like a crown left on a shelf too high for anyone to bother retrieving. You press your palm against the stone armrest. Lichen has grown along the edge, soft and green and strangely comforting. You feel a tremor, not in the stone, in you, because suddenly you realize this throne still holds memory. It holds weight, not physical, spiritual, as if it remembers the burden of being believed in, of being watched, of being worshipped, of being responsible for everything. And now, it holds only the pressure of being forgotten. There's no triumph here, no tragedy, just resignation, the kind that settles in your spine when you realize no one's coming back. You lean forward, elbows on knees. This is not your kingdom. These are not your gods. And yet, you feel them in your ribs. The way absence vibrates differently than presence. The way old power never really dies. It just sinks into the ground and waits for new footsteps to stir it. A drop of water falls from a vine above. It lands on your shoulder. Cool, sudden, like a blessing without a sender. You look up and see that the roof is now entirely green. Not a ceiling, a canopy. The forest has turned the throne room into a greenhouse. Not to destroy, but to cover, to comfort, to hush. Because even thrones deserve to rest. You stand, leave the seat undisturbed, your shape pressed into its moss for just a moment longer. You step through what used to be a doorway. Now it's just an opening in time. And as you exit, you hear the wind move through the hall behind you. It sounds almost like a sigh. Not yours, not the gods, not even the forests. Just the throne exhaling. Because it no longer has to carry what it once did. Sleep now. Let the mold grow gently over your memory. Let your breath soften like petals on stone. And tomorrow, you'll search for the last words written by a man who knew. No one would remember his name. You find a chamber by accident. As usual, there's no sign, no path, just a low, dark corridor behind a crumbling wall, narrow enough to question your curiosity. You hesitate, then duck, and enter. The space is small, no larger than a sleeping mat, and lit only by a sliver of sunlight seeping through a crack in the ceiling. It smells like ink, even after all this time. Ink and oil, and something deeper, something like memory gone brittle. You step forward. The walls are covered in writing. Not painted, carved. Line after line, script running from floor to ceiling, etched into the stone with deliberate, aching care. Letters curl and twist in ancient Khmer, the strokes delicate, almost shy, each line precise, each symbol spaced just so. You crouch, you touch the letters. They're still here, faint, softened by time, But here, this was no temple, no altar, no royal chamber. This was a scriptorium, the last one. And this was his cell, the last scribe. No one knows his name. The records don't say. No inscriptions honor him. No statue preserves his image. He was not a king, not a monk, not a builder. He was a man with a blade, a bowl of ink, and too much knowledge to let it all go. And so, he wrote. They say he came here when the empire began to fade, when the capital moved, when the canals dried, when the gods grew quiet, while others fled or traded or forgot. He remembered. He took up his tools, a stylus, a chisel, a bowl of black pigment made from burned bark and oil. He had no audience, just walls, just time, just the endless knowledge of a civilization teetering on the edge of disappearance. So he carved, not for glory, but for continuity. He carved the names of kings, the flood cycles, the names of constellations, the sacred chants, the rules of irrigation, the medicinal properties of herbs. He carved the stories of gods who were already being replaced. He carved prayers no one would answer. He carved poems about the moon, about silence, about what it felt like to be the last one writing when everyone else had stopped reading. You stand now, surrounded by his words. And though you cannot read all of them, you feel them. You feel the urgency, the loneliness, the defiance. Because this man did not believe in collapse. He believed in record. And so he turned stone into paper, and silence into script. But the walls were not meant to hold forever. The letters near the bottom are sharp, clear. They catch the light. Higher up, they blur. Weathered, eroded. Whole sentences swallowed by lichen, faded to the edge of recognition. You squint. Some lines have vanished completely. You run your hand over them anyway. The grooves are gone, but the effort remains. The act of writing is still present, even if the words are not. You find a final inscription, faint and alone, tucked into a corner, hidden behind a creeping root. 5 words, in ancient Khmer. You can't translate them precisely, but the tone is unmistakable. Let the dust carry this. You sit, your back against the wall, your breath slow, shallow, full of the same dust he once exhaled between words. You think about how small the act of writing seems when faced with collapse, and how noble, how sacred, how beautiful, not the kind of beauty that shines, but the kind that refuses to vanish. The world didn't ask for his words. It didn't reward them. It barely remembers them. But they're here, written into the walls, into the stone, into the bones of the temple itself. And now, into you. Sleep now. Let his letters trace themselves across your skin. Let the ink of his silence dry in your lungs. And tomorrow, you'll kneel beneath a banyan tree and discover that not all bones rest in tombs. You've seen trees before. You've sat beneath them, napped in their shade, watched their leaves dance in city parks. You've taken them for granted, like the furniture of nature, green, generous, predictable. But this one is different. This banyan tree doesn't grow. It occupies. It expands. It spreads its limbs like a god exhaling. Roots crawl down from its branches like veins from a celestial heart. Its trunk splits and rejoins, like time folding in on itself. It is not a tree. It is a presence. You find it at dawn. Mist hanging low, wrapping the base like a shawl. Bird calls muted, as if in reverence. The air still, but dense with scent, wet bark, soft rot, and something sharp like old sweat. You walk slowly. The roots are thick knotted, some taller than your knee. You have to climb in places, stepping from one curve of wood to the next. And at the center of it all, a clearing, circular, sunlit, and quiet in a way that makes your ears ache. The ground is uneven, littered with fallen leaves, brittle twigs, and, at first glance, stones. But they're not stones. You kneel, brush away a layer of earth, and there it is, a skull. Small, human, crumbling at the edges. The sockets gape like two silent questions. You reach further, another, and another. A jawbone, cracked and toothless. A femur, splintered at the end. Phalanges like broken rosary beads. Bones, old, unburied, gathered. You sit back, and the banyan tree watches. Not with malice, not with sorrow, just with awareness. Like it knows these bones, knows their names, knows the prayers they never finish saying. There's a story whispered in Angkor's shadows. About a plague, not war, not drought, not conquest, just fever and breath that turned into blood, and temples that filled with coughing instead of chants. The kings had already left. The gods had gone quiet, and so the caretakers remained. The monks, the scribes, the dancers, the mothers. Those who stayed when leaving would have meant leaving behind their dead. And when they too began to die, there was no one left to bury them. They came to the banyan. Or perhaps it came to them. Perhaps they laid their backs against its roots and waited. Perhaps they were carried. Perhaps the forest opened its arms and said, "Come rest here." No tombs, no monuments, no markers, only a tree, and the silence of a secret kept too long. You touch the ground, not to disturb, just to acknowledge. Your fingers press into the soil, warm from the filtered sun, and you realize the forest didn't consume them. It cradled them. It took the dead and fed them to its roots, not to erase, but to remember in its own way, with leaves and vines and shade. You look up. The canopy above shimmers. Light flickers through in broken patterns. It feels like the tree is blinking. And then you hear it. Not words, not voices, just the wind moving through branches in a rhythm that feels intentional, almost like breathing, almost like a lullaby. You lay down, right there, among the roots and the bones and the memories. The earth presses against your spine. The tree's breath rises around you. The scent of decay no longer repels you, because now it smells like completion. You close your eyes, and you see them. The woman with the fever, the boy with the bell, the man who whispered mantras as his lungs gave out. You see them not as ghosts, but as stories the forest never stopped telling. Sleep now. Let the roots wrap gently around your thoughts. Let the bones beneath you murmur in forgotten tongues. And tomorrow, you'll meet the ones who returned, not with conquest, but with cameras. You come back in the morning, but you're not alone. This time, the path hums with the chatter of people wearing linen shirts and SPF 50. Some carry umbrellas not for rain, but to preserve their complexions. Some wear $1,000 cameras like rosaries. Others hold iPhones, extended like chalices, ready to worship through megapixels. You hear the shuffle of flip-flops, the hiss of spray-on sunscreen, the soft complaint, "Ugh, it's hot." And suddenly, Angkor doesn't feel like a mystery. It feels like a destination. Welcome to the afterlife of sacredness. This is where temples go when belief has retired, when gods have grown deaf, when a stone no longer listens for mantras, but for Instagram captions. This is what comes after glory. Restoration budgets, audio guides, souvenir stands selling plastic Vishnus and soft drinks. You step aside as a woman kneels before a headless statue, not in devotion. Impose. Her friend counts down. 3, 2, smile, click. Then they leave. No gaze back, no offering, no moment. Just one more shot for the carousel. The temple you enter today has a name. It's on brochures. It has signage in 6 languages. It even has a trash can cleverly designed to look like a lotus. But it also has a heart. You can feel it Beneath the feet of the tour groups, under the script carved into the lintels, behind the scaffolding draped like surgical gauze. This place remembers. It remembers when footsteps were bare, when silence was required, when the only flashes came from lightning in the monsoon season, not from camera phones. You walk deeper, and the crowds thin, not because the temple ends, but because the tour doesn't include this far. The shadows here are longer, the air cooler, the carvings more damaged, which, ironically, makes them more honest. Here, the gods haven't been scrubbed. The apsaras have moss for jewelry. The bodhisattvas wear spiderwebs like silk, and no one's looking, which means you finally can. You find a figure near the far wall. Small, seated, half hidden by a collapsed beam. Not restored, not labeled. No spotlight, just there, waiting, its eyes half-lidded, mouth almost smirking, as if it knows the absurdity of being revered one century and ignored the next, as if it's watching the tourists and thinking, you'll be dust too. You sit across from it. You pull out your own phone, then think better of it. You look instead, really look, and for a second, the silence returns. Not because the crowds have vanished, but because you have. Your breath slows. Your chest softens. The stone stares back. And for a heartbeat, it feels like it remembers you, even though you've never been here before. Outside, someone complains that the tuk-tuk is late. Another wants to find the best view for sunset. A child points at a Garuda and asks, "Is that a dinosaur?" The gods say nothing. They have heard everything. They've heard Sanskrit prayers, Khmer songs, French gunfire, American laughter, Korean tour guides, and the low whisper of mold curling under their feet. And still, they sit, patient, cracked, and beautiful in their irrelevance. You stand, not out of boredom, out of respect. The god gives you nothing, no revelation, no blessing, but something in you shifts. You realize the sacred doesn't die. It just waits. And every now and then, someone walks far enough, past the gift shop, past the guided path, past the signs, and listens. And in that moment, for just a breath, it lives again. Sleep now. Let the flashbulbs fade from your eyelids. Let the stone press gently into your dreams. And tomorrow, you'll meet the kingdom in exile, the faces carved in cliffs, the voices left behind. You wouldn't have known it at first. There's no sign, no border post, no grand gate declaring, "Here lies the kingdom," displaced. Because when empires go into exile, they don't pack the throne. They carry something smaller, quieter, memory. The road south begins in dust, a narrow path winding out of the jungle, away from Angkor's sleeping stones, away from the faces carved in stillness. You walk it, not because you know where it leads, but because exile is often walked in confusion, not direction. The trees thin. The air thickens with the scent of wet bark and a strange sweetness. Mango, maybe, rotting underfoot. And then the rivers appear. Brown, slow, patient. This is where they fled, where the empire replanted itself, far from the grandeur of temples, far from the stone embrace of gods. They say Phnom Penh rose not like a jewel, but like a compromise, not out of ambition, but out of necessity. Too many droughts, too much silence from the divine canals, too much pressure from the sea, from Siam, from within. So the capital moved, not with ceremony, with fatigue, like a family leaving the ancestral home, locking the door not because they want to, but because the roof leaks and the fields have turned to salt. But something strange happened in exile. The kingdom shrank and survived, not as a shadow of its former self, but as something new, adaptable, flexible, less sacred, more practical. The god kings were replaced with administrators. Stone was replaced with wood. Myth was replaced with tax. And the people? They adjusted. Because that's what humans do. You sit on the bank of the Tunnel Sap River. Its surface is flat, almost metallic. Children play near the shore. Boats move like insects across the water, quiet, deliberate. You close your eyes, and behind your lids, you see the faces of Angkor, the serene bodhisattvas, the mighty kings carved into walls, the apsaras mid-dance, mid-eternity. But they're fading, not from neglect, from relevance. Because here, in exile, no one needs stone gods. They need rain. They need rice. They need rivers that don't betray them. And yet memory lingers. In market stalls where vendors still chant the names of ancient herbs. In lullabies that echo the cadence of old prayers. In rituals whispered on certain moonless nights, when even the bureaucrats lower their eyes. The kingdom didn't die. It just hid, in bowls of soup, in the curve of an earring, in the way a mother touches her child's forehead, the way a fisherman murmurs thanks before casting his net. The sacred fractured, but it didn't vanish. You walk further into the city. It buzzes. Motorbikes, plastic chairs, billboards, neon, and yet between buildings you catch glimpses. A shrine beneath a tree, a monk's orange robe fluttering behind a wall, a face carved in wood, half buried in a pile of rubble, smiling through time. The kingdom is here, in exile, but exile doesn't mean erasure. It means reinvention. You return to the riverbank that evening. The sun sinks like a slow prayer. Gold melts into water, and for a moment, it looks like Angkor never ended. It just moved into the light. You breathe deep. The air is full of both ash and jasmine. A contradiction. Like history, you realize now that kingdoms don't die with their capitals. They live in the carriers of memory, in the ones who cook the old recipes, tell the old stories, whisper names no one else remembers. And tonight, that's you. Sleep now. Let the rivers of exile carry you. Let the gods in hiding bless your dreams. And tomorrow, you'll follow the jungle deeper, where roots wrap around stone, and the forest remembers what kings forgot. You're not walking on a path anymore. You are walking through memory. The jungle has long since stopped pretending it's the backdrop. Now it's the narrator, the architect, the last archivist of a vanished glory, and it has wrapped its fingers around the story. You step forward. The ground is soft with centuries of leaf decay, like walking on parchment soaked in time. Above you, vines spiral down in lazy arcs. They don't hang. They reach, searching, clinging, anchoring themselves to broken stone. They don't ask permission. They simply take. You find a wall. Not tall, not whole, but unmistakable. Bas-relief, faint carvings. You kneel and trace your fingers along the grooves, once precise, now blunted by time and bark. A dancer mid-movement, her face eroded, but her gesture still elegant. Behind her, a war scene, spears, elephants' bodies. But it's all being eaten. The roots are everywhere, threading through eyes, splitting open panels, curling around limbs like jealous arms. The forest doesn't destroy Angkor. It embraces it. This is not desecration. It is possession. Or maybe it's something gentler. Maybe it's adoption. The kings left. The gods were silent. The people faded. So the jungle said, "I'll take care of it." And it did. You enter a collapsed corridor. The ceiling long gone. The walls bowed inward. Roots snake along the floor like veins from a sleeping titan. And there at the center, a statue, headless, seated, still somehow composed. But the real throne is not stone. It is root. A massive web of wood has risen beneath it, lifting the figure like a forgotten god returning to the canopy. You stand in awe, not at the statue, at the relationship, because this is not theft. This is not vandalism. This is grief made tangible. You wonder what the kings would say. The ones who spent decades commanding armies of workers to carve gods into walls. Would they weep at the moss? Would they curse the roots? Or would they bow, finally, to something older and more patient than they ever were? Because what is empire compared to jungle? What is gold compared to green? You run your hand along a root that split a stairwell in half. It's cool to the touch, smooth, almost polished. This root didn't just grow here. It chose here, like it knew something sacred once happened on these steps. Like it decided to hold on, just in case no one else would. You sit. The air is warm and wet, full of life. Bird calls echo like forgotten mantras. The rustling leaves above mimic the breath of gods you're not sure ever existed. Insects crawl along the stone beside you, utterly unconcerned by your presence. This is their temple now. And you're a guest. A very lucky guest. You close your eyes, and you can almost hear it. The murmur of prayers, the clang of bronze bowls, the whisper of silk robes brushing ancient steps. And under it all, the heartbeat of the forest. Steady, unhurried, forgiving. You realize now, the forest didn't forget the kings. The kings forgot the forest. They tried to control water, command stone, harness time, but the jungle knew better. It waited, it watched, and when the last scribe laid down his stylus, when the last monk closed his eyes, the roots reached in and remembered. Sleep now. Let the roots curl softly around your mind. Let the vines wrap themselves around your ribs. And tomorrow, you'll climb deeper still, into the temple no one built, but everyone belongs to. There is no gate, no foundation stone, no royal decree. There was no blueprint, no architect, no budget, no army of artisans sculpting gods from sandstone. And yet, there it is, a temple built not by hand, but by absence. You don't find it on a map. You find it by following everything that isn't meant to be followed. The deer trail that vanishes halfway. The stream that refuses to flow towards civilization. The sound of frogs, rhythmic and insistent, like a monk's bell heard underwater. You push through thickets, slide between roots, climb where the jungle demands respect, not permission. And then you stop, because suddenly you feel it, that strange shift in the air, that pregnant silence, like you've crossed into a room with no walls. This temple has no towers. Its columns are trees, thick, crooked, weeping with moss. Its altar is a stone, round and cracked, held not by mortar, but by a net of roots. Its ceiling is the canopy, dappling everything below in moving gold and green. There are no statues, but the shadows cast by the branches mimic gods. Faces appear in bark. Eyes blink in knots of wood. An entire pantheon hiding in plain sight. You look around. No pilgrims. No incense. Just you. And the feeling that something vast is paying attention. You step forward. The leaves crunch underfoot, soft, reluctant, as if they'd rather not be disturbed. And yet, nothing resists you. You are permitted, not welcomed, not celebrated, just allowed, like one drop of rain accepted into the river. You approach the stone at the center. It doesn't look like much, but then again, neither does a seed. You crouch. The stone is warm, not from sunlight, from something deeper. Time, perhaps, or memory, or just the fact that it's been touched by centuries of wind, beasts, monks, ghosts. Or maybe it hasn't. Maybe no one's touched it in 1,000 years. Maybe you're the first, or the last. You sit, and that's when you realize this place wasn't built. It formed, like crystals, like habits, like grief. The jungle didn't raise pillars or carve lintels. It simply gathered light, stillness, soil, silence, until one day the space said, "I am sacred now," and everything around it agreed. You breathe, The air here smells different, not of incense, but of sap, of time, of acceptance. It doesn't ask you to pray. It doesn't ask you to kneel. It doesn't need your belief. It is beyond gods, beyond empires. It is the kind of holiness that grows without being named. The kind that knows. You're not here to worship. You're here to remember. And you do. Not details, not history, but something older. In your bones. A feeling that your body has done this before. Sat in a place like this. Breathed this air. Understood something too large to be written down. Maybe in a dream. Maybe in another life. Maybe never. But now. Here. It arrives. And you let it arrive. The light begins to fade. But nothing here dims. The greens deepen. The roots seem to stretch further. The space begins to glow with its own softness. This is the temple no one built. Because it was never meant to be built. It was meant to become. Like you. Sleep now. Let the vines wrap around your thoughts. Let the soil carry the weight of your chest. And tomorrow, you'll hear the stories whispered by roots. In a tongue the stones still understand. You wake before dawn, not to the call of birds or monks or bells, but to something deeper, a sensation, like language, but older than syllables, older than lungs. It vibrates under you, through the moss, through the stone, through the curve of your own ribcage. Not a sound, a remembering. You rise slowly. The air is thick but not heavy, alive, charged. Every leaf seems to lean toward you. Every vine seems to pause mid-climb. The jungle is listening. No, the jungle is speaking, but not in words, in root. You begin to walk, not toward a place, but toward a frequency, a pull beneath the soles of your feet, as though the earth beneath you contains a current. You follow it, over stones covered in lichen, past trees with bark carved by weather and time into almost letters. And then you reach it, a fallen fig tree, enormous. Its roots stretch in every direction, like the nerves of some ancient creature. And beneath those roots, a hollow, a gap in the earth, a mouth perhaps, a doorway into something the sunlight does not know. You crouch, and you listen, not with ears, with bones, with breath. And that's when it comes. The root tongue, not spoken, not carved, transmitted, a language of pressure, of fiber, of signal without voice. It doesn't tell stories like humans do. It doesn't care for plot. It offers impressions. A flame once burning, a child's laughter long ago, the sensation of rain soaking into soil beside a dying king, the weight of sandalwood carried by a pilgrim who never made it home, the echo of a scream in a temple long since eaten by green. The root tongue is not linear. It doesn't obey time. It braids memory. And every root in the jungle is listening, repeating, extending, preserving. This is the archive no scribe ever reached. The one no empire thought to catalog. No index. No scrolls. Just a pulse in the dark. A synapse of wood. A wisdom older than myth. Passed silently beneath the feet of history. You press your palm to the earth. It hums. Not like music. Like recognition. You don't need to understand. The forest does not demand comprehension. Only presence. Only reverence. You imagine now that every step taken by kings, by slaves, by lovers fleeing the fire, every sandal, every cut foot, every toe print, left a trace, and the roots kept it, held it, not out of loyalty, out of habit, out of design. The forest is a recorder of movements, of intentions, of endings. You think of the fallen cities, the lost languages, the names no one writes anymore. And yet, you wonder if beneath London's subway, beneath Tokyo's towers, beneath your own floorboards, roots are still listening, still passing messages in darkness, still keeping the archive warm. Not for us, not for glory, just because that's what roots do. You sit now beneath the fig tree, and you let it speak to you, not loudly, not clearly, but completely. And for the first time, you stop trying to understand. You simply become part of the archive. Sleep now. Let the roots wrap around your memory. Let the whisper pass through your blood. And tomorrow, you'll walk where the carvings turn to dust, but their meanings still echo in the leaves. You're not sure when you started hearing it. Maybe it began with the wind, a shift too subtle to name. Not quite a breeze, not quite a murmur, more like a ripple in the green. The kind of silence that isn't empty, but full of things not yet said aloud. The jungle is speaking again, not in roots this time, in leaves. They move even when the air is still. They flicker even when the sky is calm. They whisper, each rustle a syllable, each gust a sentence, each flutter a reply. To what? To everything. You stop walking, because now it's impossible to pretend you're alone. The trees surround you, tall, knotted, fragrant with decay and life. They're not just watching, they're listening. The leaves above begin to sway, not randomly, deliberately. They answer your thoughts. They mirror your questions, not with words, with pattern. You recall something from your childhood, a phrase, maybe a grief you once swallowed, a secret you never told. And just as that thought forms, a gust of wind lifts a curtain of vines, and the leaves tremble in a soft, rattling cadence, like a laugh caught in the throat of the forest. This is not magic. This is not myth. This is the persistence of memory, not in libraries, but in leaves that once fell beside kings, and now fall beside you. The jungle remembers, not everything, only what matters. The rhythm of offerings, the tone of prayers, the hush after betrayal, the softness of first love beneath the altar's shadow, the cry of a servant boy who dropped a vase and thought the gods would curse him. The leaves recall what stone tried to forget. They record feeling, not fact. You keep walking, and the sound of your steps is answered, not by echoes, but by the canopy, adjusting, whispering, a language made of breath and light, of green confessions, the kind of language that doesn't tell you what happened, but how it felt. A tree bends slightly ahead of you. A single leaf drops. It falls slow, like a feather of memory, landing at your feet. You pick it up. It's ordinary, small, vein like an old man's hand, but holding it is like touching the echo of a story that once roared, and now only hums. You don't know who it belonged to, but you know it saw everything. Somewhere nearby, a bird calls. High, clear, lonely. Then the wind shifts again, and a sudden shower of leaves descends. Not like debris, like a blessing. They fall across your shoulders, your arms, your hair. They do not ask permission. They do not seek meaning. They offer presence. And in this moment, you realize the gods were never stone, never sky. They were the leaves, the first to fall, the last to speak. And they're speaking now, to you. You lie down in the hush. Let the canopy blur above you. Let the leaf you carry press against your heart. Let the whispers pass over you like breath through a dream. The jungle doesn't need your memory. It has its own. All it asks is that you listen. Just once. Sleep now. Let the leaves continue their story. Let their murmurs wrap around your ribs like soft vines. And tomorrow, you'll arrive at the final gate, where memory ends and myth begins again. You're not sure when you crossed over. One moment you were walking, boots damp with dew, heart heavy with the weight of ancient air. And then the trees began to change. Not disappear, just open, as if they were making space, as if something older was approaching, something that needed room. The light is strange here. Neither morning nor dusk, neither moonlight nor firelight, just gold, suspended, humming, as if the forest exhaled starlight instead of air. You follow the feeling, not a path, not a trail, a draw, the sensation of being watched, not by eyes, but by something that once was human and now is earth. And then you see it. At first, you think it's just more ruins. Another fallen tower, another staircase split by roots, another relic of some king who wanted to live forever and ended up as moss food. But then you look again, and you understand. This one wasn't built. It wasn't carved. It wasn't even found. It simply appeared. Like memory, like dream, like something the forest itself remembered into existence. There are no inscriptions, no gods on pedestals, no boundary between temple and jungle. It all bleeds together. The walls are vines. The altars are stones that once held sunlight and now cradle leaves. The ceiling is sky, but also root. And at the center, a stillness, not silence. Stillness. The kind of stillness that waits. The kind that has always been here and will always be, even when the last root dies and the last name is forgotten. You enter the stillness, not through a door, through letting go of names, letting go of kings, letting go of whether this place was real or simply dreamt by the land itself. Because maybe the forest got lonely. Maybe after the last pilgrims stopped coming, after the last monks turned to dust, after the last prayer echoed unanswered, the jungle missed them, and so it dreamed. It dreamed a temple, not for gods, for memory. You sit at the center. There is no throne, no statue, just ground, and for the first time, you feel it. Not awe, not reverence, something gentler, belonging. You close your eyes, and images rise. Not your memories, but the forests. A girl laughing with water in her hands, centuries ago. A man carving a symbol he never got to finish. A lover waiting where no one would return. A child being born beneath an Apsara's gaze. A king walking alone through the corridors, barefoot, finally free of war. Not visions, not ghosts, just echoes. Drifting, layered, remembered. The temple dreamed them all, because no one else did. Because even stones want company, even roots want purpose, even ruins want to be heard. And now, so softly it almost breaks you, you understand the final truth. This temple is not where the gods lived. It's where they went to sleep, not out of despair, out of peace. They watched their empire fall. Watch their names fade from lips and stone alike. And they said, let the forest have us. Let time cradle us. Let the leaves whisper us back into the soil. Let no one find us unless they truly listen. And so here you are, listening. You lie down in the soft cradle of moss. The air smells of jasmine and old fire. The light dims, not to dark, but to dream. And in that dream, you realize Angkor never ended. It just became something else, something wilder, softer, truer. It became this, a temple made not of stone, but of memory, root, silence. And you, sleep now. This is your offering, not words, not gold, just your breath. The temple accepts, and as you drift, you feel its last message, not in your ear, not in your mind, in your bones. You are part of us now.